I can talk. Hi, this is Dwani. Uh, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm actually just starting out into world of design. Uh, I'm currently a grad student at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I'm doing my master's with a focus on UX design. I am an international student. I'm originally from Mumbai, India, and I did my undergrad in computer science. And I worked as a software developer for a couple of years, in fact, for quite many years. And now I'm trying to switch my career to be a UX designer. So I'm just starting my journey in world of design.
And Dewani is one of our profiles tonight, so we'll hear more from her.
Thank you guys.
Do we have any other new folks that want to speak up?
I can introduce myself. Justin invited me. I am Dan Gioia. I'm a service designer at Fjord in Chicago. Just popping in tonight to see some portfolios and give some feedback. So great to meet you guys.
Thanks for coming, Dan.
Yeah, no problem.
Perfect. Holly, do we want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's. So welcome everyone. And if you can please make sure that you keep yourself on mute unless a panelist calls on you until we are done. I do want to make sure that, okay. If you have any questions or you need assistance, there's a chat. You should have a toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You might have to click more to open the chat. Click the little meatball at the end that says more, and you'll get a flyout, and you can click chat there to open that up. Oh, good. There we go. Okay. Tonight on our agenda, we'll quickly go over upcoming events, presentation of the panel, review of portfolios, Q&A, and then if you want to grab a snap of the screen in case you have any difficult with audio or video. So Jamie, I don't know if you want to grab a quick screenshot. Al?
Yep. So we have upcoming events. We haven't scheduled out for the end of the year, so we hope that we can see you all again. So November, we'll be talking with Justin Ranton, who used to be a designer out at Facebook, and he will be informing us about the critique process. You know, there's a lot that goes into giving feedback and receiving feedback, and he's going to talk about that. And in December, we have Lamar Woods, who used to work at Asynchrony, but is now has his own company, the So Heart company, and he's going to talk to us about entrepreneurship and UX and how the two kind of go together. And that'll be Thursday, December 17th. So we'd love to have you out at those, and they will be virtual. So if you're not in the STL area, no worries.
And tonight's meetup sponsor is Tech Systems, and we have the lovely Justin Hoyce here, not Hughes. I know it looks like Hughes, but that's a trick. It's Hoyce. And so Tech Systems, actually, Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit about Tech Systems?
Sure. So we've been around for about 30 years. We're a full stack technology service company. About 2 years ago, we purchased a digital agency out of Chicago called One North Interactive. So we have pretty much a full bench of about 90 people specializing in CX, branding, all that good stuff. And then we have partnerships with AWS, Snowflake, and a whole practice built around cloud and all that fun stuff too. So yeah, so I head up our digital and creative side of the house here in St. Louis, and that's us. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, and Justin is great if you are looking for a job or looking for folks to fill spots for jobs. Justin's that guy to reach out to. He's awesome. So you definitely can find him on LinkedIn, Twitter, all the places.
Yep, and he has great folks working for him too.
And cool swag.
I wasn't going to mention the swag, but the swag is pretty good. Okay, and tonight's panelist, Al, would you like to do the honors?
Oh my God, I would love to do the honors. I love Laura. Laura's my fave. So Laura, one of my favorite people in the whole world, is the business development and talent acquisition lead at 1904 Labs. She actually was born on the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. I knew that. Fun fact. Laura is the co-organizer of Launch Code at 1904 Labs Code with Pride Meetup, which offers a safe space for LGBTQIA technologists and allies in the St. Louis community. Laura is also co-founder of the Experience Throwdown. She's a accomplished recruiting lead, social media guru, and loves bunnies. All around, just great person to have in your life. If you are looking for sunshine and all the happy things, Laura is great for all of that.
I may have put a small edit to your bio.
That's totally fine because I haven't updated my LinkedIn and you would think that I would like do that, but I appreciate it.
Well, just the bunnies part. I felt like it was important.
It is. It's fun.
No, I know.
It's on brand. 100%.
Exactly. All right. And you want to do Jonathan too?
No, you got Jonathan.
Oh, okay. So Jonathan Sedaris is the User-Centered Design and Innovation Manager at Wells Fargo Advisors. He has more than 10 years experience as a user experience leader in both consulting and corporate environments. This includes most recently hands-on management responsibilities for interaction design, visual design, prototyping, accessibility, user research, and innovation, as in the Innovation Lab. At Wells Fargo, he's a proud father of 2 crazy kids, a husband, currently resides in St. Louis, and is a fellow lover of the label maker. And really great to work for.
Thank you. No love for dad jokes, Holly, either?
That's true. You do have some pretty awesome dad jokes. Did you like the one I sent you about making tissue stamps?
I did.
Thank
Fantastic.
Okay.
Cool. So Ken, he's the co-founder and chief creative officer at Spry Digital LLC. He has over 15 years of experience in creative services ranging from brand strategy, identity, product design, marketing, user experience, interactive design, and development. In 2010, Ken helped found Spry Digital. Based in St. Louis, Spry blends innovative web application and marketing solutions to build holistic platforms solving multiple business problems with a single unified solution. As partner and CMO, Kim oversees Spry's creative and strategy team, ensuring all digital products deliver the best possible outcomes. And Ken's super great because Ken gives a lot of people in the area jobs. So something to think about. You are looking. Ken is also.
I try. Thanks, Al.
Ken has also graciously hosted us for meetups before in his awesome space, and we certainly appreciate that. Really great supporter of the UX community.
Yep.
So,
we're glad to have you guys. Oh yeah, of course.
Another tricky name, More. Don't be fooled by that I in there.
It fools a lot of people, and all you have to do is keep it simple. It's just More.
Yep. All right.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
And then we have all tricky names tonight. This one I knew because I live by Gioia's Deli. And so Dan, I need the skinny on the cured meats after the meeting's over. But so Dan Gioia is here tonight, thanks to Justin Hoyce, not to be confused with Hughes. Dan is a service and interaction designer at, is Fjord the correct way to say that?
Fjord, yep. It's a soft J.
That's what I thought, but just double checking. Where he leverages his diverse background to bring unique flavor of design to a multitude of Fortune 100 clients across a variety of industries. Prior to Fjord, Dan earned his master's in industrial design at RISD, designed high-end jewelry, and worked as a fine artist. Dan has a passion for attempting to answer seemingly unanswerable questions using speculative and experimental design approaches. He's quick to craft service prototypes, frequently on the hunt for new research methods, and always ready to facilitate a workshop. It's Pretty nice. What's RISD?
That is Rhode Island School of Design. It is a design school in the Northeast in Rhode Island.
Okay, just I didn't want to make any mental leaps. There's a lot of schools.
No worries.
Well, thanks for joining us from Chicago. And I
Glad
hope
to be
it's
here.
at least a degree warmer than here.
Well, technically I'm in Denver, but working out of Chicago from New York, went to school. I'm all over the place all the time. So
Where are you literally right now?
I'm literally right now in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, okay. So you're cold. You're colder than us.
You'd be surprised. It's nice here.
Oh, all right. Well, so the way things are going to go tonight is we're going to have our panelists share for about 10 minutes or so some of their best tips for portfolios. And then we have 4 portfolios for review, and we'll have each of the portfolio submitters do a quick 30-second introduction of themselves and their portfolio. And then we'll ask everyone to mute, and the panelists will do their bit of feedback and share their insights, and then we'll advance to the next person. And if you have questions, if you can kind of make a note for yourself until the end for the Q&A portion, we'll have about 5 minutes of Q&A between each portfolio, and then we'll have some time at the end as well. So you can also queue up your questions in the chat too, if you'd rather not speak aloud. So panelists, Jonathan, Ken, Dan, where I can only see some people on my screen. So if you all, and Laura, okay, I see everybody. Everybody's here and you're all on the same screen. That worked out good for me. Who wants to kick us off?
I'll go if you want, Holly.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. So we do a lot of hiring as well. So I definitely see my fair share of portfolios and resumes. So I kind of just took some time to jot down, I think, some of the things that I've noticed and looked for over the years, just kind of best practices. So the first one I would say, and again, some of these may be, obviously it's one person's opinion, right? So, but from my perspective, I've seen people who are obviously pursuing a specific aspect of UX. So you may be a designer or a researcher or whatever, and that's awesome, right? And your portfolio and resume should be obviously heavily leaning that direction. But what I see that is, I wish I would see more of, and I think can be a separator, is even if you're like a designer, say, for example, through and through, if you have any exposure to user research or accessibility or anything else, don't downplay it. Like, highlight the fact of that, because that could be the difference between, you and someone else who's, if all things are created equal, right? And so I encourage you guys to make sure to highlight aspects of it, even if it's not necessarily what you're going after, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is kind of specific to resumes. Be specific as opposed to using sort of generalities or buzzwords, right? So there's a difference between saying designed a complex UI system versus saying designed a medical app for doctors to connect with other doctors or something, right? So the more that you can kind of, create a visual in the head of the person who's looking at your resume, I think that's powerful, so they can get a better sense of the type of work you've done. I noticed that this was something, at least in the portfolios that were submitted, that was done really well, so this is great. But when you're building your portfolio, don't just show your stuff, talk about your stuff, right? Tell the why, give us your thought process, how you arrived at it. Frankly, it's not enough anymore just to kind of show cool pictures, right? So that's something I definitely look for. I love, the human-centered side of me wants to know, how did you arrive at that? Another kind of tip I give is in resumes and portfolios, talk about what you did, not what the team did. Sometimes I see people saying we or the team or the group, and it's really hard as someone reviewing it to get a sense of what role you specifically played. And that's what, frankly, we're interested in. I've seen people who kind of have a portfolio that they've built on over the years, but they never sort of take out the old stuff. So, you know, do periodic reviews of your portfolio. And if you have, you know, really old designs that are probably dated now, I would just wholesale take them out, even if it was something you're proud of in the past, because you don't want that to sort of be like the first thing someone sees. It could be enough for them to, you know, to move on or whatever. And then the last kind of tip is even though I think it's stupid that people get judged by this, I have found that details matter. So if you have even one misspelling in your resume or, you know, misspelling in your portfolio or something, I personally won't hold that against you because people are human and make mistakes. However, I have been enough around other hiring managers to know that could be the difference between them saying, well, clearly this person has no attention to detail. So if they can't even get that right, what else would they screw up if I hired them? Like, it sounds brutal, but people think that way. So those are kind of some of the things I that sort of jumped out at me when I was kind of thinking about putting best practices together here.
I can go next. Jonathan, I loved, and I want to kind of build off of one of the things that you said on the why. But coming from talent acquisition and then a former recruiter that helped people get like contract jobs, showing the processes, you know, user flows, wireframes, sketches. Like I used to get a lot of hiring managers to show like these steps in the process. I liked what Jonathan said about like explaining the why and kind of like talking about the problem and that kind of thing. But the different steps in the process and then the final pretty thing is a big thing for sure. And that's something that when we do portfolio reviews in the labs and kind of work on helping each other polish our portfolios, that's you can ask Martha. That's the biggest thing that I bring up every single time. And then injecting your personality and treating your portfolio as a piece is huge. It is your like a living portfolio piece that hosts all of your other portfolio pieces. So I can't think of a more polished way to put it, but eating your own dog food kind of comes to mind. Applying all of the things that you learned to that beautiful piece that's hosting your other pieces is important, because I've been on a few portfolios where I, you know, like I wish that it would have just been applied. And it's an easy thing to overlook, but it's definitely very noticeable when people put those touches on their own portfolios for sure. And again, the personality thing, like I like to, that's a big factor in my hiring, is to know the person, the human behind who creates pieces. So, you know, getting those little tidbits after reviewing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes and portfolios, just like 1,000% like makes the difference. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got. I'll save some for folks.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'll jump in and I'll follow up on that. I couldn't agree more on the personality thing. You know, people are reviewing these portfolios, they're reviewing tons of portfolios. You know, tell a good story. That's like a really, really, really important detail. And a simple structure to consider when you're telling your story is, you know, you want to open it with like, this is what I'm going to tell you. This is what you're going to find out in here. Then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. So you kind of want to like really just like let them know what's coming. You know, kind of sandwich your story with like, here's what's going to happen. Here's what already happened. You know, because you want to be able to have them get the idea quickly. There's a balance between taking them on like a journey and also like not leading them through a dark woods, basically. You really want to consider your audience. Actually, I think that's probably the most important thing is, you know, if you're looking for a UX job or a service design job or an interaction design job, really want to think about what a specific company you're looking at is looking for. You know, read the job listing really specifically. I know it sucks to like, yeah, I can expand on the storytelling later in the meeting. I just saw your note, Matthew. But you know, I know it sucks because a lot of times you'll work on this portfolio, you'll send it out, and you won't hear back ever. And it's like, wow, I put all that effort in. But if you know, really tailor it to fit that specific audience, you're going to capture their attention a lot more. Another thing, back to that, like, you know, typo thing from before, get someone to proofread. You know, like you can read your portfolio over and over and over again. You're going to drive yourself insane and not see really glaring errors. Just send it to your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your dentist. It doesn't matter. Just like get someone to proofread your portfolio. That's super important. And lastly, is impact. Everyone knows focusing on process is super important in a portfolio, especially as a designer, because everyone can make a pretty screen, but like, how did you get to that pretty screen, right? A lot of the times you'll have someone reviewing your portfolio who does not have a design background, who doesn't really know what they're looking for in a portfolio. But they will be able to recognize impact. And if it's financial impact, that's awesome. You know, like, what did your design actually do? And if it's student work and it didn't actually do anything, that's cool too. Talk about the potential impact, or, you know, what you do with it if you took it a step further. But don't just stop at, here's a cool thing I made. You know, talk about, you know, the implications of that cool thing.
Well, I've got nothing else to add to that because pretty much everybody covered everything. So well done. You know, there's a lot of fantastic points there. I just want to say, showing your portfolios is not easy, and I give everybody kudos tonight who's willing to put themselves out there. But I also think it's fabulous to receive feedback, and hopefully everybody from this process really picks up each of these experts' points, because we see a lot of resumes, we see a lot of portfolios across our desk. Just to reiterate some of those things that we heard tonight, presentation style is really important. Like, we may be on the research side, but really think about just good design principles when presenting your work. Think about balance, think about contrast, rationale of your work. Definitely hit on those goals and results. That's what people are there to look at, and that's what you're selling for yourself. Impact comes in a lot of different ways. There's the really hardcore metrics, business results, but you can make an impact on a culture, you can make an impact on a process. Be able to express those different sides of yourself. Don't undersell yourself. I think Jonathan said that as well. Like, really think about any experience you have that made some user impact or some team impact, and really sell that about yourselves. That also goes in hand with be comfortable selling yourself. It's not about the nuts and the bolts. It's about who you are as a person, and think about really what you bring to the table in those cultures and in that process. Think about what you're selling for yourself, and talk about the outcomes that you create on those teams. Personality is huge. I think the important stuff to convey with a personality, or you know, who you are, the about us, is really show your thought process. If you have a philosophy, share that. Talk about what you're striving for. It's not just about your title and what you do mechanically, but it's really what are your guiding principles and what really motivates you. When I'm looking at multiple portfolios, it's really the person that I know what they're striving to achieve. I think that's going to be the differentiator. And again, just showing your rationale and your process. You know, practice what you preach. We're all here talking to clients, selling ourselves to employers, but really, if it's not put into your own portfolio, you know, that's a huge missed opportunity. So get that peer feedback, get other designers, other UX people to look at it, pick it apart. The more eyes, the better. And also just keep refining it, honing it, editing it, and get it to that point. After every single interview, you have a chance to go back and just make those little tweaks and enhancements, and they're going to make a big difference.
Just a quick question for the panelists. Do you have a format that you think works best for portfolio review, whether it's website, PDF, PowerPoint? Like, do you think that there's one that is easiest for you to work with?
It's an interesting question. I love being sent to a website. I will agree that navigating a website is sometimes there's a lot of website planning and things like information architecture that I don't expect necessarily the person that is interviewing with me to be a website designer or have some of those practices or disciplines, but think about the presentation. And honestly, to me, if it's in a PowerPoint deck or a Google slideshow or a website, that's secondary to me than the content and the subject and what I'm learning from that. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah, Holly, I think just one thing I would add, if it is going to be, I mean, whatever digital medium it is that you're using to communicate your portfolio, again, I'm speaking probably from my side, but I feel like if it's not, it better be mobile friendly. I can't tell you how many times, like, obviously probably non-COVID, right? We're probably all sitting in front of giant monitors now all the time, but I mean, there's times I'm doing reviews when I have 10 minutes when I'm walking between things and I'm doing it from my phone or whatever. So if it's not accessible from a mobile device and friendly that way, that can separate you in a bad way, I guess, relative to others, right?
That's really
Yeah.
great.
I'll agree on that. And I think it's easier to make a PDF into a website than make a website into a PDF. So if there's like a way to start with your portfolio, if you don't know what your audience is really looking for yet, you don't know if it's going to be like, hey, send me a portfolio or link me a portfolio. Again, I think it's easier to make a PDF into a website or put a PDF on a website than it is to put a website onto a PDF. But
Great. Let's see. Laura, did you have anything to add, or are you in agreement before we?
I'm in agreement. The only thing that I didn't hear is, and it's feedback that I got from a client once when I presented, was if a website, I guess, kind of going off of the mobile friendly, but make sure that that it's interactive and all of the things work.
It's fully functional.
Fully functional. Yeah.
And I think one thing that, as we get started here, one thing that might be helpful, I think we sent this to you in the questions before, to think about is if you can call out things that if you encounter them that you would maybe expect to see on a resume versus a portfolio or vice versa. I think that is when you're going from cover letter resume to resume portfolio, it's a little bit of a mental struggle to figure out how to organize all that content, like which thing goes in which place. I think that's tough for some folks. And so if that opportunity arises, if you can highlight that, I think that would be helpful. And we'll go ahead and get started so we don't run out of time. And so our first portfolio is going to be Katie. She's going to do a quick 30-second intro, and then Al and I, theoretically, I'm going to show you this, and then she will pull up Katie's portfolio.
Yep. And
I'm crossing my fingers that all of this works.
And everyone, I have our participants linked in on here. So if you are looking to hire, you can find them. So just so you know, anyone looking to hire, all these folks are looking for jobs. So I'm going to share Katie. Oh, host disabled attendee screen sharing, Holly. You got to let me share. So Katie, I'm going to pull your portfolio up, or Holly, one of us will, and then we'll go through it a little bit and let you talk about it a little bit.
Okay. Well, while she's pulling that up, I guess I can go ahead and introduce myself. I am Katie. I am a UX research and designer. I enjoy exploring problems from every angle and collaborating with others to find the right solution. Right now, I am working with a personal learning network of educators to help them build a website.
There we go.
So, this is my portfolio, and on it I have some examples of past
projects that I've worked on, including a app that was to develop a smart pantry to help people with their shopping.
Holly,
A
can you pull up her app as she's talking about it so we can kind of get a little bit of an overview?
Yeah, I was actually gonna say we had our 30-second intro, then we're gonna hand it over to the panelists. Is this
Okay.
what these are the different projects here, Katie, is that right?
Katie, is
Okay.
there one that you want to pull up to specifically talk a little bit about your process and talk us through a little bit before the panelists go into review mode?
The project that probably best shows my overall process and how I think and everything that I have on here would be the Smart Pantry, which is the human-centered design process case study.
Okay. All right. Well, I can have the panelists tell me how to drive, I guess.
So, Holly, I don't mind sharing a little bit of feedback if you want me to jump in. I kind of did pre-work and looked at Katie's portfolio. So, is that okay for me to jump in?
Jonathan. Katie, can you give us a little bit of an overview over what you did in the process for this? And then Jonathan, can we have you talk about your feedback?
Sure.
Okay, so this is a case study that I did on covering the human-centered design process. And through that, I created a app called Smart Pantry. And the purpose of that app was to help people basically with their grocery shopping to avoid rebuying stuff that you already have at home in your pantry and to help you decide what you can make with what you have or what you're planning to buy. So through this project, I went through the human-centered design process and started with defining the problem, some user interviews. I interviewed a variety of different users, asked them all the same questions, and then laid them out so that I could see and compare answers. Off of that, I built some personas. Sorry, it's really weird not being able to scroll through it yourself. After that, I did a journey map, some competitive research, looking at some other apps that did some similar things but didn't quite hit all the marks. Some different ideation processes to help build some ideas. After that, I actually started going into some of the design side of it and built some wireframes, did a paper prototype, did an interactive paper prototype, which was really interesting. After that, I started to prototype do a more in-depth prototype in Adobe XD and started getting some user feedback with that. That was actually when I first went back and had to start redesigning everything almost. After I did that, I interacted with some users, got some more feedback from them, and did a more formal user test. And then there are some before and after shots of feedback that I had gotten from users during the official user testing.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katie. Jonathan, if you could start us off, please.
Sure, and I'll be quick. I know I talked too much. So Katie, first of all, kudos again. I think Ken pointed out earlier, awesome to all the folks who are willing to kind of put themselves out there. It takes a lot and says a lot about you, that's in a good way too. So a couple of things I'll highlight that I look at as kind of opportunities, and then things I call out that I think are really good. Opportunity wise for me, again, I think you heard a theme early on that many of us who are hiring are kind of powering through, frankly, a lot of portfolios and resumes quickly. So when I'm looking at a portfolio, I want to jump straight to the meat. Like I want to see, how do I get to the case study and learn about it? And your banner I had to kind of scroll down quite a bit, candidly, to get down to the meat of it. The other thing is adding a little bit of structure to the portfolio. So without, first of all, having to kind of hover over the sections and then read it and then kind of dive in and see what was behind it. Whereas I think if you can kind of frame them up a little bit clearer. We talked earlier about just spelling grammatical stuff. For every one of me out there that won't hold that against you, unfortunately, there are people that are. So I think Dan gave some fantastic advice about having someone kind of just proofread. One of the things, Katie, that I would love is you gave an awesome intro about yourself, but I didn't really notice anything on your portfolio that told about you, your personality, how you got into it. And I think I can tell just from your intro, you have a lot to share. So I would highlight that. The things that I loved, that case study that Holly just pulled up that you briefly talked us through was awesome. I mean, really great way of breaking it down, talking about the what, the why, the how, spot on. I mean, I think I can tell you put a lot of work into that, and I think it pays off clearly. I love that you have a quick way of getting to your kind of paper resume, if you will, to print out. That's important. A quick way to contact is good. So I love seeing those up there. And the last thing I'll say is, for me personally, I use LinkedIn as a huge way to separate people as well. I don't know if you have a LinkedIn page, but it looked like you did from the slide that Holly was showing. But I didn't see that highlighted unless I missed it anywhere in your portfolio. And I'll be honest, when I'm hiring, if I'm doing a multiple round interviews and when I get someone's resume, I always do a LinkedIn search, and 99% of the time I'm connected to someone who knows that person. And if I trust that person and they tell me Katie's awesome, I'll send you to the second round. But if I can't quickly get to your LinkedIn and stuff, I might not be able to do that. So I would recommend, pulling that up. That's kind of my feedback. It's good though. Really good job.
Awesome feedback, Jonathan. Did one of the other panelists want to chime in, Laura?
Yeah, I can jump in. I really like Jonathan said, that you both talked about and showed your process in there. That's awesome. My tip would be, as an opportunity, is to practice presenting prior to each specific portfolio piece and bulleting out some talking points that you have for each one, especially as you gain experience, because it's sometimes it gets a little in the weeds, especially for somebody like me who's not very technical. And when I hear about people's different projects, and then for your resume, again, like Jonathan said, I love that it's up there. And that it's downloadable. That is amazing. And also that you don't have your contact information on there, because as a recruiter who actively hunts people down, you'd be surprised at the different ways we can find you. So that's a good way to protect yourself. And that's something that you want people to get in touch with you, but you also don't want to get spammed. So I think that you put that on there and you handled that really, really well there. So yeah, that's all I got.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Yeah, are we going in order? Sorry.
I mean, we're flexible.
I'll go off that. Yeah, great job, Katie. Again, kudos to you for putting it out there. We talked about design principles. I think you have a very strong sense of aesthetic and not letting too much get in the way. I didn't particularly mind the big masthead with that, just describing, setting it up, kind of what you do. Typography is nice. The colors are not jarring. It just felt nice to look at. When you get into the portfolio, really that setup is really fantastic. And Dan spoke to this earlier, like talk about what you're going to talk about and then go into the details of it. And, you certainly show the thought process. You show about your ability to break down a problem and going through the methodology to arrive at outcomes, which is very fantastic. I think as stuff doesn't get in the way of the aesthetic, it also doesn't necessarily Nothing is really infused with your thoughts or your thought process around it. It's very much a by the numbers, we did this, we did this, we did this. You're describing very much what the methodology is. It might be nice to just infuse a little bit of thought about that process and what was being learned along the way. That would have been really valuable to kind of enhance that part of the experience for me. The reflection was fantastic. I got to admit, I don't often see that on a lot of portfolios, but telling us what you learned along the way, reflecting is improving. And if you're not improving, like, why are we doing any of this? So that was fantastic. Mention the personality bits, a little bit more about us, something about your, ethos or personality would be really great. For the first work example, it almost felt like too much information. And maybe that was just the organization of content within it or sectioning it up a little bit differently. It was like a hit list of greatest hits of deliverables, but maybe thinking about the phases of the project and from the research to the design phase, and just kind of like knowing when to collapse things a little bit and when to expand upon things would be a good way to go for that. It started feeling a little bit long. As hiring managers and whatnot, we're looking at a lot of portfolios. So just being able to summarize that either at the beginning, if I want to go into the details, drill a little bit further, I can. But that was really good. And then the outcomes, showing the iterative design process is fantastic. And so, mechanically, technically, you're showing proficiency for the job, and that's the most important thing. It's just kind of softening up a little bit and making it, from a usability standpoint, just a little more digestible.
I have to jump in very quickly and say that that Dan's advice earlier was just played out in real time about knowing your audience, because you can see between me and Ken, I geek out at the details, and it was probably too much for others. So I think that's a great point of like knowing your audience earlier. And if you're going after something very specific, do your homework, learn about that person, and it might give you that edge as to kind of where to go with it. But anyhow, I just thought I'd point that out. It was very interesting.
Yeah, and Jonathan, to that also, sorry not to spend too much time on this, but I think at different stages of your career, when you don't have big bodies of work, you want to say everything about these few projects that you're representing. I think over time, as you get a little bit more and a little bit more, the work kind of stands on its own. But absolutely, as an associate member, somebody coming into a team, I would love to see this level of thought put into a project.
And to kind of go off something that Jonathan said, ask when you're going through the process, you can ask about like what you can expect and who you can expect to meet with. So it's a very great question. I love it when people are like, okay, what can I expect from next steps? Or I love to be super transparent about our process and be like, hey, first step is talking to me, second step is a phone interview with one of my practice leads that, we'll be going over kind of more of your technical capabilities. Third step is group interview. I don't know if everybody is transparent, but it doesn't hurt to kind of ask and see if you can kind of tailor kind of based on what next steps and who are going to be in those next steps.
Yeah, especially if you're presenting it and kind of what areas to hit harder on and what areas to kind of go. You see people glossing over a little bit, you can kind of move on.
Definitely, and all really good feedback so far. I want to start mine off with I think you've got a really simple, structured story here, and I think that's really that's really solid in my opinion, because I know a lot of people try to over design it sometimes, and it just becomes this slideshow of pretty things, which the design process is not always pretty. That being said, I think you might be a little heavy on the copy here, and I think you might want to consider what can you tell visually that you don't have to use text for. Also consider the hierarchy of information on the page. So as we're scrolling down in this, the largest thing on the screen by far is your matrix of interviewees. It's good to see that exists. Do we need to see that much of it? Maybe not. Maybe tease a little bit of it and less of this large, dense thing. Another point of feedback here is the way you described it was much more interesting than the way I see it. So when I land on this page at the very top, the first thing I see is design process case study. And that's not really what this project is about. Maybe that was the assignment. But the project was about something about the problem. So, you know, you want to be able to hook someone who's reading this, right? So you want to let them know like what this project is about. This project's not about the assignment. The project is about the problem you had. So, you know, just like any good story, you want to be able to like hook the viewer early on, get them to like get invested emotionally in the problem, and then take them on this journey with you. Because as it reads right now, it's a little bit academic and it's a little bit, step by step, which is good to show your process, but there's a sweet spot of step by step and storytelling that I think you need to fiddle with a little bit. But overall, like it's really clear you've done really good work here. One thing on the previous page as well, if we can hop back there, you have your projects listed, and again, this goes back to titling. So, you know, human-centered design study, and then next to that is wireframes. I would consider changing wireframes to something a little more like process, because it's a very narrow sliver of what a designer does, right? That's, if you're looking for a mechanic and they just said wheels, that's a very small sliver of what a designer actually does. So if your point in having this wireframe section is to show that you have this ability, I might try to generalize it a little bit more. They're going to be able to tell us wireframes by looking at it, and if they can't, then they're probably not the right hiring manager for that position. So think about making that a little more broader.
Great feedback, Dan. So in the interest of moving things along, I believe our next person up, we're going to have, if everyone could either queue up your questions in the chat or make yourself a note, put it in your little post-it parking lot till the end if it doesn't get covered. I think it's going to make the most sense for us to just go one at a time. And Matthew, I believe you are next. I'm going to open your portfolio. If you can just give us a, maybe like, I know I told you to do a 30-second intro, but maybe like a minute, just to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and orient the panel to your portfolio, and then we'll turn it over to them for feedback.
And if you can't hold your question, feel free to put it in the chat, and I'm saving it so we can ask later, because I know I'm someone who would forget. So feel free to put it there.
All right. For some reason, I'm more nervous than I should be. But anyway, here we go.
You got this, man.
You're good, dude. You got it.
I am pivoting from a 16-year career in scientific research towards UX research and service design. I discovered this entire process about 1.5 years ago through just some people talking about UX. Really liked the process, really identified with the process, but wasn't always sure why everybody was making digital stuff. And then somebody said, sounds like what you're doing is service design. And I looked into that and the entire world exploded for me. So I've been trying to figure out how to get my butt into service design as fast as humanly possible, because it just makes sense. It is a scientific process with the human element thrown in. So I've taken these case studies are one of the case studies is one where I didn't even know what UX was, service design thinking even existed, but I was doing it. The other one, yes.
Matt, which case study would you like us to pull up? So
man, it's gonna be a tough one. I would just for right now. I haven't added it because I just finished it. Is the Keynote one? It's up on the top right of the panel. Yeah. It'll take you to a Medium article. It was the quickest way I could put it together to get it out. And I just have not incorporated it into my website portfolio yet.
Okay,
so I hope that is okay.
Through this a little bit so we can understand your process.
Pardon?
If you could just talk us through a little bit, just so we could understand.
Yeah. This was a project that I started literally at the same week the quarantine hit. So everything here is remote and digital, as far as what you'll see. This project comes from my past in working in a laboratory environment that is quickly going digital, all the way down to digital notebooks. And there are, the biggest problem I noticed was with digital notebooks is you still write things down on paper and then you transcribe them. But in the transcribing process, you miss a lot of detail. And there's this glue of these really finite details that usually would make it to a paper notebook that never make it to a digital notebook. And I set out to find out a way to close that gap. Like I said, there's like I said, the little quote here is 15 to 25% of an operating budget can be, poor data quality and redundant data is lost, can cost companies 15 to 25%. I actually see that increasing because of the move from an analog to a digital, just because of the way you work in a active lab. So again, I set out, I did some basic market research on this, and ran into a lot of digital notebooks, a lot of good ones, a lot of deep databases, but none of them really, the technology to write to paper or write to digital is not quite there or affordable for all individual companies. I interviewed a few, and it's the cost that matters. So I went in and I focused on, we're flipping through it really fast here. Okay, we can stop right here. So I did some qualitative data and some quantitative, and isolated down to about 5 individuals working in the lab, and did some interviews. These interviews led to some really interesting aspects, but what happened is there was so much detail, so many things they were giving me. Instead of trying to break down everything they said, I turned everything they said into variables. And from those variables, I kind of mind mapped it back out, and then all the details I said from the notes I took. And then I started highlighting all the variables that overlapped. And before I knew it, I had 2 completely separate personas. So talking to some UX researchers a lot, they say sometimes you get in that trap of just personifying your favorite interview. This was my way of getting around that. Is by turning everything into a variable and letting those variables overlap and to turn into a new persona. And over those personas, I had 2. I picked out one to focus on as like a target. And then I broke down their needs into jobs to be done, which was just up top there. And from those jobs to be done, I was able to kind of come up with a design, like a design, kind of a design brief, or just a research brief. And from that brief, I discovered it wasn't a new electronic lab note was needed. It was a way of capturing these what I call quick notes. These notes you jot down on Post-it notes, napkins, the back of your glove, wherever you are at the time. And that was literally a quote from one of my interviewees: is I jot down anything, chem wipe, paper glove, anything. So and these are the things that details that don't always make it. When you're talking to your stakeholders or your supervisors, they're going to ask you how exactly you did that, and you're going to go back to your notes and go, well, I followed the protocol, but the protocol isn't the same. Why'd you get a different result in the protocol? And those are the really finite details that can be lost now. I broke that down into, this is my little workflow, my initial workflow, and it came out with 2 ways that potentially an app could have worked for something like this as quick capture. And I went back to the people I interviewed and asked them, I took them through the system and said, pick one. They did, and it actually simplified even further. And it was—
Hey, Matt,
yes.
We need to turn it over to the panelists. Can you wrap up real quick?
Sorry,
I don't want to run out of time for you to get feedback.
Well, essentially, it was amazing. If you go down further, there's the take home is, okay, I wireframed it out, but the take home was these key pivot points that I discovered. There were key discovery points of that I went from a digital note system. No, they need a capture system. No, this capture system needs to be even simpler than not just— I was initially trying to change it from taking handwritten notes and digitizing them, kind of like Miro does with turns it into text. They didn't even want that. It was almost simple to taking the picture and getting it to my digital lab notebook as fast as possible, with a date and an initial, and that was it. It was I went from this massive complicated idea down to this very simple, what could be potentially a very simple app.
Perfect. So
great. Let's turn it over to the panel. So who would like? Thanks a lot, Matt. Who would like to go first?
I'll go. As a service designer, I feel like I have a lot to say about this. So first of all, like, this is awesome work. Like, I love the problem you're trying to solve. The format in which you're displaying your story here is really solid. I do think that some pitfalls you have in this go back to that personality piece that I think Ken was talking about. You took a very, very scientific approach to this, which is awesome to see. Like I'm like in love with like your little variable map that you have cooked up. Like as a service designer, like I love to see how things are framed and reframed and like new ways of looking at things. That stuff is like, that's gold. However, just because you took a scientific approach doesn't mean you have to really do a scientific explanation. You know, we're solving a very human problem here, right? So I think like you could really enrich this story if you threw in some quotes from some of the research you did, or if you spoke about things not as, you know, as scientifically, but in a little more of a human way. You know, I forget some of the terms you used, but you know, try finding some more relatable ways to display this information, because chances are, you know, people that are viewing this have probably also tried to take notes digitally and failed. So that is my thought on that. Also, you mentioned personas before, but I actually think what you were working with was closer to mindsets. You know, personas are a little more structured. Mindsets are a little more about behavior. And when it comes to note taking, I think we're more in the behavior realm than we are the persona realm. Feel free to throw that away, or just, you know, go down a rabbit hole on Google with what mindsets are. But just food for thought with that. But otherwise, like, I think this is really solid work, and this is good stuff here.
Hi, Matthew. Can you hear me? It's nice to see you. Piggybacking on what Dan said, I really enjoyed hearing your explanation of the process. I like hearing people like you speak. You have a very scientific mind, a very research-oriented mind, good at explaining what you're doing. And I think it really shows your work a certain kind of intellectual curiosity, which I really look for in candidates. You're really trying as hard as possible to get to the root of the problem. And you're also adapting certain processes and methods to kind of arrive at that outcome, even combining things, thinking outside the box, pulling the right tool at the right time to kind of express that. So that's really fascinating. And I really liked hearing that. I think when it comes to the Q notes, you definitely went deep in that respect. I found the amount of copy pretty good on the rest of your portfolio, where you have shorter snippets kind of describing a background. Yeah, we could pull that one up. It felt right as we kind of, at each level, it was like kind of the right amount of fidelity, I think, that was needed. I always love seeing sketches. That's always a great way to show some of that design thinking, working through a problem. As we went a little further into it, the map of the bar was fantastic. A different kind of document that kind of paints the picture, like Dan said, of the service design aspect of it. You're not limited to just Post-its and you know, mind maps when you're thinking about the problem. So that's really strong. Just purely from a mechanical logistic standpoint, the website portfolio, the way it's laid out, the information architecture, having those projects in your navigation is confusing. I look for navigational terms in navigation, and I thought you were at first getting creative describing an area of your website with terms like that. And it took me a moment once I scanned down the page that you're actually describing the actual case study work. So maybe think of just like sectioning those work examples under a work area or case studies, whatever it may be. Some of the graphics, this came up earlier too. It was really fun getting to the mind maps and details of the research on the research laboratory pipeline optimization project. But when you got to the bottom, it was just hard to make out kind of what the outcomes of that were. This stuff, cool to see the process, cool to see that all mapped out, especially when you're combining it with table layouts. Think of chunking that up a little bit differently. If you do want users to kind of see what you arrived at, yeah, these items in particular, the thumbnails at the bottom of the page. It's cool seeing busy work and seeing holistic stuff come together. It's not necessarily getting me to process or comprehend the thing that you're trying to arrive at, is what I would say. It's just, it looks like a lot of good stuff together on the page. And especially from a mobile standpoint, that stuff even becomes almost impossible to read. So even the media that's on your page, think about how consumable that is in different devices. Otherwise, great work. It's cool to hear your thoughts and hear you talk.
I'll go quickly. I'm not going to repeat anything Dan and Ken said. They both gave excellent feedback. So the only kind of additive things that I would say from my perspective, I noticed, unless I missed it, I didn't see a quick, easy, direct link to like a printable resume. I think that would need to be a good, quick add. I was initially jarred when I clicked on Q-Note and it took me to a Medium article. It's kind of like, oh, what happened? But you already kind of explained you're planning to integrate that, so that's good. I'll tell you, Matt, you have like a nice little thesis statement there by your picture about who you are. But when you say you have a passion for this, saying you have a passion, but then you told us your backstory. I was in this career for 16 years. I learned about this and my mind was blown and I wanted like that is your passion. Like that shows your passion through storytelling. So I would encourage you to bring more of your personality and that backstory you gave when you introduced yourself to life in this site, because that would resonate with me to be like, okay, this guy is serious about this because he pivoted, changed. I could tell like he has a passion for it. And then the other thing is, unless I missed it, I also, back to my earlier comments with Katie, LinkedIn, didn't see that highlighted or easy to get to. So I would definitely make sure you bring that in. So those are the only additive comments I had.
And then all I have, especially if you're publishing Medium articles, is also maybe put a link to your socials besides just LinkedIn on there. And this especially goes for like people that are visual as well. So if you have other avenues where you display your work, I like to kind of see all of them. And it would be cool to see, like, check out your Medium. And then just lastly, kind of get the presentation to a easily digestible time frame. Just because most initial interviews are about anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, at least with us at the labs. And second interviews are typically around the same. And then third, with us are about an hour. So just keeping in mind kind of the time frame that you have when presenting, and then going back to the audience and kind of knowing your audience and who you're presenting for.
Thank you so much, everyone. And it sounds like you got some great stuff to chew on, Matt. Laura, would you recommend putting the socials in the footer? Like that's kind of where I normally expect to see them.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
my
what you were
go-to.
thinking?
Yeah, my
Okay.
go-to is to just also scroll all the way down and be like, okay, where is their Instagram, LinkedIn, Medium, like Dribble.
That, or maybe like a contact, and then you would find it on that page. So one of those two paths. Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Matthew. Dewani, you are up next. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. I just saw a picture. Sometimes that means people are away. So I'm going to go ahead and open up your portfolio. And if you could take just 1 or 2 minutes to tell us about yourself. I know you got a chance to do an intro earlier, just to orient the panel to your portfolio, and then we'll turn it over to them.
Sure. Yeah, so I think I already give my introduction before. So I am interested in more of interaction design. Like, so as I'm looking to pursue or looking for a job as a UX designer, experience designer. And so if you scroll down, I would like to walk through the second case study. I had that question, like whether my second case study should be the first one, but that's a different thing. So if you take a click on that,
This is the one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just keep in mind, you've got about a minute or two.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. It's thinking about it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, so this was actually done as a part of a design challenge, and it was done just by me. We were given a challenge to reimagine or make the online learning or easier for students or professors or TAs? Like uh, with COVID, everything's going digital, like everything's going online. So what can we do something to make it better for students or professors or TAs? So that was a design challenge question prompt. And actually, this was supposed to be a group project, but my team really didn't show up. But then I decided to still go ahead doing it on my own. And I started with a 5 why technique, like drilling down why we want to improve the experience and what it would benefit. I did conduct a survey, online survey, to get a quick, like little inputs. This was actually very short duration. I did it in 36 hours along with my studies and part-time job. So looking at the surveys, I saw that people use different platforms while studying online. And I saw the comments coming in that they have problem with reduced focus, no motivation. So which brought me to questions like, how can we improve systems to motivate them to study? Like, oh, I actually narrow down to student population, and then rather than focusing on professors and TA, because those population were like difficult to reach in terms of like I would not be able to get inputs from those, and it was easy to get inputs from students. So those were my 3 questions, like how to help them motivate to study, stay focused, and meet the deadlines. And I storyboarded because that kind of gave me inspiration about thinking of ideas, how to go about solving the problems. And I had few ideas that I came up with, like to have a focus mode into LMS itself. Like, so when the students are studying, they are not distracted by anything else. They don't have a way to go on and check social media or any other platforms. And most of the time people, since it's remote and from home, they tend to uh, delay stuff and do at last minute. So having the news feed kind of thing into the LMS, giving them notification about their students, their friends submitted the assignment, or some professor posted a reading. So having that view might motivate them to finish things on time. And plus having a highlight, like easy way to join a class, like seeing that on the very front login, like after logging in, it would be easy for them to figure out things, like, and not really waste time fiddling around where to find the information.
Dewani, we need to turn over to the panel. Can you wrap up real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that's about it. Like after wireframe, I just did a high fidelity prototypes, but this was my first time with Figma. And I guess like if I had to improve, so in my reflections, I have like if I had more time to work on, I would work on my visual design skills. And yeah, this project actually made me realize that it's so important to work in a team, because you have somebody to bounce ideas with. So yeah, it was just about that. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I can kick us off again. So again, like great work. Like simple scrolling story, easily digestible. I like how you have these like headers, breaking up the text. So if I'm just doing like the fast version of this, I'm able to absorb it quickly. Which is really important. Depending on how people are absorbing this. You're going to have some people that are going to take the time and just sit with it and absorb it. But you're going to have some people that are just kind of blasting through as many of these as possible. So that's a really good feature here. My largest criticisms would be there are like good challenges on a project to discuss, and there are bad challenges on a project to discuss. So a good challenge is this was a hard thing to do, but we overcame it. Whereas a bad challenge is like my team wasn't showing up for work. And maybe it's just because this is a portfolio review, you're being more candid. But when you talk about your work, I wouldn't really undersell, the rest of your team, and I also wouldn't undersell your abilities either, because you spoke about, oh, it's my first time using Figma. Don't apologize for your work when you present it. Be proud of it. Even if you think it's it could be better. This is your chance to say what you like about it, what went well. Additionally, when you said that you focused on students, you said it was too hard to do the other ones. I would flip that to be a little more optimistic and say, like, I saw a really good opportunity with students to explore this because of X, Y, Z, not necessarily because the other thing was too hard. When you're in the professional world, things being too hard might not be a good enough excuse. And you might not have the luxury of who your audience is, but you want to really focus more on the opportunity than the challenges that you weren't able to overcome potentially. Other than that, like, I thought this was really good. Another thing is your sketches or your wireframes feel a little more like sketches than they do wireframes. Wireframes, for me, need to feel a little more in progress, whereas those felt like really thought out sketches. So just consider how you talk about those, and what work you want to show. Don't be afraid to show stuff that's really scrappy on ripped up loose leaf or post-its, because that's how most of us work in the day-to-day. So we want to be able to see how you're going to work in the day-to-day. So it doesn't have to be too polished. So other than that, like, I think this is really great work, and you're telling a really good story here. I would just focus on the positive more.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Jonathan, did you want to go next?
Sure. For me, Dan had a lot of great feedback. You did a great job calling out resume, LinkedIn, some of the things I've honed in on in this. I would say that when I look through some of the case studies that you had there, or some of the things you were highlighting, there was a lot of aspects of user research in what you did. But when I quickly come to your homepage and kind of look down, it just screams like designer, designer, designer. But I think you have some good research stuff to highlight. So I would think about ways to bring that to the forefront. And then I would also say that for me, I candidly was a bit confused about what you were going for with the notebook section, and how that differed from work and what the intent was there. So I don't know if kind of what you were going for there, but it didn't immediately jump out at me kind of what was the difference between the two, and what is it that I'm kind of looking at, frankly, in the notebook section. So.
Hey, Dewani. Really nice work here. I'll start with the opportunities that I saw, and Dan and Jonathan both hit on a few of those. But if English isn't your first language, I would just suggest having somebody review it. Personally, I use Grammarly, which is an app that I run all of my language through, and it just fills in some words. It uses the correct, tenses of things. I got a sense of that just looking, and without knowing who you are. But again, sometimes it's that front layer of a thing that you need to get past, whether it's grammar or spelling. So I think that would be beneficial. Some of the prose is a little bit long. You go into a lot of copy to explain things. Find a way to kind of chunk up that content a little bit more with more kind of digestible thoughts around a thing, because at times it did feel long-winded, particularly with the white copy on the black background. That can be very tiresome for eyes when they have to do a lot of reading. And so I love the black balance. I think it makes work really pop. Find a way to kind of break up light and dark maybe on the side if you do like representing your work in such a way. For the positives, I really loved how you set up the portfolio. You had a great background area, and then you drove into the details. And I think that kind of structure just kind of helps set us up and what we're going to be looking at. Thank you so much for revealing kind of what your role on the project was. Even if it's just, I was the designer versus that, it just really helps us understand. It's very representative of the work that you actually do. And it's okay that you're not everything on every project, but it's just really helpful for us to know specifically with the thing that we're seeing, your role was this. Jonathan spoke to that a little bit earlier. And then your About Us section is fantastic. You can be a little bit more academic and dry in other areas, because then you're met with that. And it's just really a breath of fresh air when we can see who you are. I do like headshots, but they're not necessary. Bias is very real, and I wouldn't expect anyone to necessarily show headshots. But it is nice when you do that and you work in a culture that kind of embraces, diversity, and just that it was nice to arrive here after going through so much copy and explanation of background. The work is really strong, the level of detail. The last thing I just want to repeat exactly with what Dan said. Some of the sketches and all that looked a little ready-made for this, like a little prepared, and it'd be cool to see a little bit more of your rough idea thinking, some of that process to arrive there. And maybe that is how you sketch. I've seen people do that, but sometimes.
That's what it is. Like those were my first ones with me.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's awesome. Sometimes you just want to see kind of how the sausage is made. So nice work overall.
Wonderful. Okay. And I think, thank you so much for sharing with us, Dewani, and to our panelists. And
I don't know that Laura got a chance to. I know we're running behind on time.
oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's just really quick. Something that I really liked, since you you said you were really passionate in going towards the interaction design. And when I kind of look at folks like that, I love to see the research behind that. It's super important to me, and we have a particular position that's called a visual designer position, and we don't really get a lot of portfolios like this. So this would be ideal for something that that we would be somebody that we would be hiring for that position, because not only are you showing your beautiful work, but the way that you came to that, and the research and thought process behind it. And then the other thing that I appreciated, if you scroll down a little bit, was not only your role in there, but also kind of what the project is at a glance really quickly, right next to what your role was at the project. So yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Sorry about that, Laura. I'm watching the clock. Okay, so we have Arisha next, and I will pull up her portfolio.
Should I begin speaking?
Yeah, go for it.
Good evening. My name is Arisha Blunt-L. My DBA is Rain Love. I'm a recent graduate of the Launch Code Coder Girl UX program. I'm also a small business owner. So the project that I'm actually showing in my portfolio, I did my portfolio after I graduated, so I kind of only had the ideas of what I seen during class. And don't know if I did the best, but I did reach out to a few people to have them look it over to see what it looks like. But sometimes I feel like people are kind of pacifying me. But for the most part, my project started off when I first started at Launch Code. I was looking at a GPS that I was looking to accommodate professional drivers and everyday drivers. And as I did my research, and I was doing too much, I was trying to put too much inside of this mobile app. And by the time I got done, it was focused on looking at small business owners and finding an app that can connect all small business owners. Me being a small business owner, and everything started to come to during the pandemic, the start of it, I started to see that there was actually a need for this app, but I don't really know everything about IT, and I just recently started doing this. So as I began my research, I started finding more and more things. And because of the pandemic, some of the research I didn't have to do because people were talking about it all over social media. So what I have here.
So can you let us know which case study you'd like us to look at this evening?
Well, what's on here is basically a project that the app that I called is Ujama.
Okay,
and
perfect.
So
where do we click at? Which one do we click at to find it?
Well, you can, all of this is basically, all of it is just that one project. That's the only thing that I actually did.
That's fine. Where would you like us to click at so we can kind of get an idea of what you worked on?
So for me, it was more so me wanting to know if I put together everything in a proper way, for a professional, portfolio. So from my education to the research to the creative side, I mean, you can start wherever you'd like to go because all of it is going to highlight who I am.
Holly, can you click on the research, and then Arisha, can you tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll go into the panel's feedback because I got a chance.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we, since we are running really short on time, is it okay if we just hand it over to the panelists and I can have them let me drive to wherever? I know Jonathan said he did homework, and I think the others did as well, and I'll just kind of go where they tell me to. Is that cool? Does that work?
Good with us. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Take it away, Jonathan. You're good.
Okay, sorry about that. I thought Holly was asking for me to start. So a couple of quick things when I went through. I think you did a really good job down below on this page of the telling us who you are, your background. I felt like before even getting to meet you on the Zoom that, you know, I got a sense for your personality. And again, we keep harping on that, but I think that's a very important thing and a good differentiator. For me, I think that the structure, kind of to the earlier comments, the structure of the site, I think the main navigation's good, home, portfolio, you know, about me, contact me. But where I kind of got started to get a little bit confused, to be honest with you, was like underneath portfolio, you know, there's these different buckets here. And when I clicked on research and I landed on that page, it wasn't immediately clear to me, like, what am I looking at until I actually scrolled down further on this page and then read a little bit about kind of what you were trying to communicate. And then I kind of went then back up. And so, you know, I think framing up on each page some sort of like a way to anchor me to what it is you're trying to communicate, to Dean's earlier point before, and then kind of showing the work and referencing it is probably a good thing to kind of take a view of that through this website. I like that you linked out to some prototypes. I think we designers focus oftentimes a lot on just the pure designs themselves, but I'll be honest now, when I'm looking for a designer role on my team, being able to prototype is frankly just as important. So it's nice to see some of the interactivity of the prototypes that you had under portfolio and the navigation. But again, I didn't really find a way to get to it without hovering over portfolio, right, and going to it. So just again, structurally, I think there's ways to take the content, which is rich and good, but structure it in a way that's a little bit easier for somebody browsing this to consume. But really good content overall.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to review this beforehand. I apologize, but going through it now, I'll double down on this. Is a little difficult to navigate. I can tell there's good stuff in here, and I'm like mining for it, but it is a little hard to get to. One thing I noticed off the bat, and I do think your personality really shines here, is I think you're missing some opportunities, especially like right when you land on your website. I feel like the first thing you see is, you know, somewhat of what, I don't know if it is a stock image, but it feels like a stock image. And, you know, this is a what we call like a hero image, right? This is a very large image. It takes up the whole screen. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to show, to tease some of your work and to get people excited about what they're going to find in your website. Whereas this, while it looks pleasant and clean, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't feel very intentional. So I would consider maybe putting some of your work back there. Yeah, those are my thoughts right now. I'm gonna probably have some more thoughts as I dig through this. But.
Laura?
Hey, yeah. So my only thing, and I blame it partially on myself because I never wear my glasses, is when I was looking through it on my phone, just it's easier on my eyes to do black text on white background, or, I mean, I'm not technical or professional, but maybe structuring it in a way where somebody who's bad at that kind of stuff like me is able to read it a little more easily, and it's a little more comfortable. Other than that, I do love the navigation on the top. I know exactly where to go. The contact me, the about me, and then this is very, very you. And I feel like when I was looking through it and listening to you talk about it, I'm like, okay, I see the person that made this. Oh, I like that.
Were you done, Laura? Sorry.
Oh, yep. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought you
I thought it
got,
was cut off. Yeah, I thought
yeah,
you got cut
same.
off. Hey, Dwani. Sorry, not Dwani. Talking to Rain now. Um, is that your preferred name? Sorry, I see Arisha, but everything on Zoom seems to be Rain.
Actually paid for Rain Love, so I mean it's easier for
Okay,
people
Rain
to
Love.
pronounce.
Okay, that's all good. I just want to know preferences. So yeah, boy, I land here, and with that about us, it's a one-pager site, so it obviously is just scrolling you to an area of the site. I'm hit with that about us message. I mean, that says everything about you and your passion and what really motivates you and drives you. And I want to get that out of people all the time. Considering where that story is told, it's an awfully big kind of headline at that font size to express so much information about you. But sectioning a page that kind of talks about your journey and what motivates you would be maybe a better use of it in that area. It's just a very dominating aspect of it over the work. When you get into the work, I think it's the second, maybe it's the research tab. I think this is probably a product of the web template that you chose, where the thinking is in there, but you've chosen a pattern that is more of a kind of a random discovery aspect of it, and you're not really showing a structured thought or process around what you are arriving at. And so that's very strong from a kind of a discoverability, and I want to look around at different things. I think this probably played a little bit better in your design area than the research area. But again, showing the passion for what you do, showing what motivates you is a strength here. The last thing I would mention is just think about the boldness is there, and I love boldness. When you're dealing with a lot of bold colors in certain areas, just think about how those are used. That's kind of one of the design principles. Use a bold color to draw users to an area that you really want them to check out, or a call to action, or something that you want them to notice. And when you're hitting people with so much color, it becomes a problem of focus and hierarchy, and you're just hit with a lot of that at the same time. So think of using color as kind of a system to navigate and walk people through it, saying, look here. That would be really helpful as well. But nice work overall, and it's nice to kind of see a bold presentation like you've shown us.
Great. So that was a great job from the panel. And thank you, Rain Love, for letting us look at your work. I know it's not easy showcasing what you do and who you are. And thank you for letting us see a portion of who you are. I wanted to open up for questions for the panel. I did write a couple down in Zoom, so I'll start off with the first one I saw. So the first one I saw was with One Portfolio website. How do you cater specifically to different companies if you're applying to many different positions? Or would you suggest making a PDF version that can be tailored?
So I spoke. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I spoke a little bit about that earlier when we were talking about preferred mediums. Think about the content that lives on your website as being adaptable to the purpose and the time and the place. Something that we recommend and we do ourselves is kind of structure your work or case studies to be adaptable for a different medium. Maybe do a long version and a short version. Do a long version that allows people to drill into it when they want to on the website, but maybe also create that short version that can live in a PDF or a slide deck. And if you have the opportunity to tailor that by pulling slides out, inserting slides back in, showing people that I've tailored this presentation for you, but there's more examples, or being able to drill into those details at the website. I think that's a really great balance to not have to worry about always adapting your website for the audience, but supplementing your website with kind of another medium using the same kind of content, just kind of like condensed down a little bit. So that's just one of those good examples where you can enhance the medium and build kind of a net of leave behinds or marketing for yourself that just the website's at the center of. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Perfect. Do we have a question for the crowd before I move on to the other ones that I saw?
I had a question that I wrote down. Would it make sense? I know there was a comment that like at one point somebody was like, I enjoyed reading all that information, and then the other reviewers like, I did not. Would it be too complicated to do like a click here to learn more, or does that make it busy, or is that a good solution to the problem?
Depends on the moment, right? If it's non-vital information to telling the story, I'm all about like hiding information in places. Obviously, your portfolio is going to be hopefully reviewed by someone like a recruiter or hiring manager, also the design team you'd work with, the design team's leadership. And every one of these groups is going to look for something different in your portfolio. So your portfolio, in my opinion, and feel free to push back on this, everyone else, but there needs to be a 10-second version, a 2-minute version, and a 5-minute version, all in the same place, which is why, that's why I was a big fan of Dewani's, nice juicy headers that kind of, kept me invested and engaged as I scrolled through. I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, but I do like the idea of giving some hierarchy to like some summary text as you go through.
Yeah, 100% to what Dan said. It's as much about the structure of content and allowing the ability to drill into it if I want to, but also making it skimmable for me to jump to those sections, good headlines, breaking it up a little bit more. That's the main takeaway. It doesn't have to be long or short. It needs to be presented. That's how people read on the web. When you're going to any website, you're finding the piece of article that the piece of the site that is interesting you at that moment that you want to drill into. So I'm not a fan of hiding stuff necessarily, but just kind of chunking it up a little bit differently.
I think Matthew Ship did a really nice, he just had different formats that kind of caught my eye for different important things. I really like the way he formatted some of the different texts and the important things. And as somebody whose eyes get tired and gets to look at a lot of things, like that was really helpful for me to have like different size fonts, different formats, so that like I was drawn to specific things. And it also helps me like just as a human slow down and be like, oh, okay, like super interesting. I want to learn more. Like, let me like dive in a little deeper to that.
Perfect. Jen, did you want to ask your question, or did you want me to ask it for you?
I can kind of paraphrase it. With my portfolio, I have kind of a main UX header, and then underneath that, I also have links to my graphic design and photography. And I left that on there because I was kind of told that it was good to show a scope of, your work and different, avenues that you've gone down. But I also worry that having that on there might detract from people looking at it and thinking I'm focused on UX. So I just didn't know if I should keep the website strictly devoted to UX, or if and just kind of rely on social channels to show my other arts, or what you would recommend there.
For me, it would be just kind of all how you lay it out. Like how much space does the other stuff take up? Like at a glance, does somebody like you said, does it scream like this is who I am as a UX designer? Or is it like UX graphic design photo, like just kind of all like in one? So it's really just the weight of the UX stuff to the other stuff for me. But like you said, maybe putting it in your socials like is another way for somebody to get to know the whole person and get to see like all of your work. That sounds like a great idea to me as well. If you're kind of having trouble playing with the weight, and I don't have like maybe one of the more technical people can like recommend like that kind of balance.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's a really good question. I would say, I think that's where like an about me section is like a very natural place, because what you're kind of saying is like, hey, the main goal here is to communicate UX, but I also want you to get a sense for my other passions and what I do and things like that. And I think that fits really nicely into the about me. And there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with, kind of showing and linking to that stuff. Just don't let it dominate or be too intertwined with what it is that you're trying to get through, which is I'm applying for a position which requires a certain skill set, and make that clear, right? That would be my feedback.
Great, thank you.
That's awesome feedback, you guys. I want to make sure to respect our panelists' time. Do you have time for one more question, or does everybody need to get their PJs on?
I'm happy to stick around for a little bit.
I'm happy to stick around. I actually want to follow up on that last note though, really quick. As someone with like a really diverse background, like I was a sculptor and a jewelry designer for some reason, like I would do your best to find a way to weave in your other abilities into your portfolio. If you have photography skills, there's no reason that can't live in your design portfolio. Not saying it's a separate section, I mean integrated, take artful photographs of your app you're designing in context. Use it as more of a superpower instead of more of like I also do this. Because once you start being able to like really reinforce what you do with your unique background, you're going to become a lot more attractive as a candidate for hiring.
Okay, yeah, and I actually did use, I guess the notes within my UX projects, I used all my own photographs. So I kind of used that to link it in. So that's already kind of in there. And then I had an additional photography section. So maybe I'll just tone it down a little bit. So that makes sense.
And Jen's underselling herself. I've seen her portfolio and her work is outstanding.
That was same thing. All the work on my portfolio was the same way. All that's my work, all images. But I was kind of figuring out how do I link that back. I didn't want to link the pictures because I didn't want to confuse the message. So how do I make sure that okay, this is something else I do, not this isn't just stock photos.
Do you have a recommendation for how many people you would say present your portfolio to for feedback for somebody who's first building a portfolio, or even somebody who's had one for a while and it's just time for a refresh?
I don't, Holly, I don't know that there's a magic number, but I think the approach is, the reality is, especially in St. Louis, right? This is STLX. I feel like we're only 1 degree separated from knowing each other. And so if you know like one person to say, hey, some couple people that that you trust to say, hey, this is what I'm looking to achieve. I want somebody to review my portfolio, give your feedback. I can guarantee you they each know 1 or 2 people who they know will be really good to give it to you, and just kind of leverage your network. I think it's less about volume of people seeing it and more about the quality of the feedback that you're getting, in my opinion.
I'll agree with that. And from a designer's perspective, like keep in mind your own mental health. Sometimes showing your portfolio can be somewhat emotionally exhausting, and if you're getting feedback that's competing, that's also really exhausting. So, take care of yourself when you're getting your portfolio reviewed, and don't take any feedback personally. It's all meant to better you.
Yeah, and also taking feedback. I think different people take take feedback differently. Not one bullet point is correct. It's all in context of the greater whole. So just let it wash over you, kind of read the meaning, try to understand kind of what people are arriving at, and then apply it. But we still want it to be yours. We still want it to be your representation. So don't think that one piece of feedback in a list of positives and opportunities is going to be the thing that drives it. It's really taken as a whole, and take it with a grain of salt what people tell you too. Think of their motivation, how they're experiencing it, and then apply it in the way that you think is best. But yeah.
I would say also sample a variety of people.
Exactly.
So get, maybe like a hiring manager recruiter or somebody who has more like a stronger visual background, and just kind of yeah, get a sampling from each, and then kind of make little tweaks based on, you know, what resonates and what you hear from that.
I think that's really necessary. Yeah, good advice.
So we're 15 minutes over time, so I'll ask for one more question. Aaron, if you can go ahead and ask your question about UX HCB. Or did you want me to read it all?
Oh, sorry. No, I really appreciated the like rules of thumb of the like show it, like tell me what you're gonna see, show it, and then tell me what I just saw. Is there that kind of thinking or logic that you can apply when you're editing or reframing previous work?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think you always want to be able to tell a coherent story. So any edit you make, you want to make sure that how you're starting your story and how you're ending your story tells the same story effectively. You know, like if you're shifting your piece, if you want to focus more on the prototyping that you did instead of the research you did, make sure that in your intro and your conclusion that you are saying, you know, I was a, you know, wireframing champion, and here's what you're about to see. And then when you sum up that story, it's I was a wireframing champion. Didn't you see it? So I would just make sure that, you know, if you're making a change in your story, that you don't lose whatever thread you have going through that story that makes it coherent and enjoyable.
Yeah, I think storytelling is a good thing to study when you're thinking about drafting that. Many people are too close to their own story to really effectively communicate that. So circling back on what people learned, just kind of, you feel like you're over explaining it, but it really just kind of puts a nice bow on it and wraps it up. Also, I think studying kind of the journalistic standards pillars is also a very key thing, like the who, what, why, where. Just kind of helps you frame why you're putting those words on the page. What do you want people to get out of them? It also makes sure that you're kind of covering your bases. There's nothing worse than reading something and you're halfway through the article and still wondering kind of where it's going or why am I reading this material. So storytelling and those journalistic aspects of it, I think, are very helpful too.
Great, perfect. I want to thank you everyone for coming out again, and thank you to our lovely panel and our folks that were getting their portfolio reviewed. It takes a whole bunch of courage to do that. So thank you so much for being willing to step forward, and thank you so much to our lovely panel. We know you guys really invest in the community, and we're so glad that you could come out. So STLX, as you know, is normally free for most of our events, probably about 99% of our events, but we do have memberships. And the great thing about memberships is you help us to keep this mission going. We try to keep so much of our stuff free as possible. And this helps us to do that. And also you get some cool swag to go along with it too. So you can find all of these on our website. So if you're interested in signing up to help out STLX, please do. Then Holly, if you can go to the next slide. Then if you want to get a hold of us, this is how you get a hold of us. Holly and I are always down to chat. Holly more than I'm the introvert on the team, I'll be honest. But you can find us here at any of these places, or if you want to know more about STLX, you can find us there on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or our website. And we also have a Slack where we're very active in. So if you're wanting to be located, if you want to be connected to the local STLX group, definitely hit us up on Slack or email us and let us know you want the link, and you can find us there. I want to thank you again, everyone, for coming out, and I hope you all have a safe night.
Thank you, panelists. Thank you, brave submitters. You did an amazing job. And thanks so much to everyone who came. And thanks to my awesome co-pres and favorite introvert. We are yin and yang. And completely. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next meetup. And Jonathan, thanks for making me lead a meeting in a Wednesday costume.
Always trying.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic evening.
Stay safe. Happy Halloween.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Great.
Thanks.